Hey, what's up? I'm back with another one. So, quick disclaimer. Anyone new viewing my page for the first time, please excuse the lack of production value. I, in fact, did at one point have a good intro, a good outro, some cool music to it, graphics, you name it. And then my computer decided to update without me saying so. I just put remind me later. Nope, that bitch did what it wanted to do, and yeah, now I can't create uh, a nice production value type of video. Until I get this shit fixed, it's gonna just have to be like this. So I apologize for that. The second thing is, all the way up to July, you will never see a single ad or commercial in any of my videos. One of the things I do for a living is I'm an actor, and I just finished wrapping up on our first film. I should say on my first film, not R. I don't even know who R is. I guess a step. I don't know. But on my first feature length film. Um, so, what does that got to do with the advertisements and everything? Well, I also got hired to do 2 YouTube commercials. And they don't actually let the talent see the commercials, the unedited, the final product. Of course, we're acting it out and we know what we're supposed to do. And me being the protagonist of the commercial, I wanted to see how they actually edited it, how they made it look. But yeah, they said, oh, we were already sent it off to the clients. The clients, are going to go ahead and air it. And usually, with stuff like this, they'll air it real soon. So I'm just dying to see how they came across making this. I hope they didn't make it too corny or cheesy. But the only reason why commercials are playing is because I want to see when that one that I got a chance to do pops up. And it's not my first rodeo, but it is my first one with YouTube, as I've done quite a few other things, as I showed on one of my videos I posted last night. So anyways, let's get to this. He's been, up there with one of my best, favorite content creators. And I remember the first time hearing him, I'm like, man, this guy would be so fun to have a beer with. He just has this witty, sharp humor that, like, you ain't gonna get away, from him in a shit eating, a shit talking contest, because he is just gonna freaking annihilate you. So yeah, without further ado, let me go ahead and play that chapter. And this happened in my own city of Denver, and this is one sick fuck. Let me just say that.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video, we're talking about a few things. First of all, we're talking about a guy named Travis, off to a bad start there, a woman named Kenia Monge, and we're going to talk about what happened in Colorado. A lot, by the way. We keep going back there. It's really in the major leagues now. In 2011, downtown Denver, a series of events led to a game of cat and mouse.
Now, I'll tell you this much, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, because I know how certain people could feel about certain things. But how can I say this? I'm really searching hard for the words because I don't want anybody to find offense by it, because that's not my intentions whatsoever. When Gabby Pateo and what was it, Brian Landry, when that whole incident happened, I mean, it gripped the nation. That's all you've seen on Facebook feeds. That's all I seen on YouTube. All I seen on the news. And it made me wonder, why is it that this is such... I mean, the Denver field office was the one who were leading the investigation, not the Utah office, but the Denver office, because of its resources compared to Utah's. And since Denver is booming, we have the resources. It makes me wonder what differentiates that kind of, concern, care, we're going to do everything we can to catch this guy, to where, I mean, everybody on social media is talking about it. And yet, when other children go missing, even of the same race, they don't get the same kind of treatment. And it made me wonder, like, what was so special about her? I mean, yeah, I know she was a content creator, and no, I'm not separating this into, ethnicities. What I'm saying is there's a lot of, you know, girls her age that are Caucasian that go missing, girls her age that are, Hispanic, African American, Indian, Oriental, like a ton of girls her age go missing. And why did it get so much attention and captivated America for a good month? I don't know, but Colorado as a whole, I mean, in a sense, Mike has it right, but that fucking asshole motherfucker that I wish I could kill, that Chris Watts, Jesus Christ. Like, I cannot watch it without crying, because I just think of my daughter, and if you really loved your children, how the hell can you do something like that? So I hope his time in hell is just, oh, I know it's bad to say on another person, but what he did was just god awfully bad. I mean, I hope he just suffers. And yeah, but they weren't from Colorado. They were from North Carolina. The mass murders, yes. Unfortunately, we do have two very popular cases of that. One of James Holmes and one of Eric Dillon, or Eric Klebold and Dylan. I forgot. Dylan what? I forgot his last name. But his mom went on TED Talk and, said how difficult it is to accept your son's death after you know what he did. And for no reason, really, whatsoever. A lot of misinformation was out there. And really, there was no trench coat mafia. There was no, what a lot of people said. And I had talked about that in one of my videos, because my best friend's dad was internal affairs. And before that, he was a detective for 30 some years and made it into internal affairs. And we were all perplexed that Jefferson County, where Columbine's at, didn't do, almost like this most awful, awful, awful shooting of the children. Yeah, how they didn't go inside the building for up to 70 minutes. And Jefferson County was doing the same thing at Columbine. In Denver has no jurisdiction over there, but when Denver heard that nobody was moving in on anything, you can see most all the SWAT teams, all the cars that started coming through were all Denver, and that's not their jurisdiction. But they didn't want to see loss of life more than what they were already getting reported from, the poor kids that were, getting dragged out and, getting pulled out. And I mean, whoever thinks that something like this is going to happen, and it does, I mean, I know a lot of us would be like deer in headlights, like, shit, what do I do? Fight or flight mode now. You can't really fight against somebody who has a gun at a distance. How are you going to get close enough to, beat the shit out of him and disarm him? So yes, we do have these mass shootings here that have just kind of popularized it even more, with all these sickos giving credit to, all the Columbine shooters. Some have even devoted fan pages to the kid, Eric, one of the two, and it's just sickening that somebody would do something like that. But nonetheless, yes, with Colorado expanding and more people moving here, violence has grown, and yeah, it's grown rapidly. So that's my rant about Denver. It is a lovely, beautiful place. I've lived here all my life to this point, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon.
Travis Forbes, a baker, being both. He was gluten-free. I think that might be the only thing he was free from. Though, he wasn't quite that picky before. And I doubt he is now. So, let's give it a go. It's busy downtown Denver we're popping off to tonight. You know, I always, it's like a running thing, I always gotta make fun of the places the videos are set in. Dang, I'm out. And this night, back in March 2011, well, maybe some people were out having a few sups, doing a little dance, having a grand old time at many of the myriad downtown D nightclubs.
Pepsi
For those kids, you know, fresh out of high school, maybe a little bit younger than they should be to be in these places. It's the time of their lives. When nightclubs are new, booze is exciting, and you don't avoid these places like the plague. One of these was the 24K Lounge in Lodo, what the kids call it. And on the night of the 31st of March 2011, there was a gang of them out there having some fun. Girls' night, and flashing a couple of fake IDs. One of them was Kenia Monge. 19 years old, outgoing, happy, and she had just graduated Cherry Creek High School less than a year before. And she was hoping to get into TV production. Kenia was a reliable, responsible, smart young woman. She had moved to Denver from Honduras at age 12, following her mother who had moved a few years previous and married an American man. They had 2 kids together, and with Kenia arriving, made it a family of 5. So what happened on the night of March 31st, early April 1st, was both bizarre and frightening. That night, Kenia was supposed to go out to one of the many clubs there to meet up with some friends, right? But she rocked up and the bouncer took one look at her fake ID and gave it a no-no. So Kenia and a couple of other friends, they went to the 24K Lounge. Kenia wasn't as close with them, and she didn't have the stay together, leave together rules she had with her close gal pals. Because at one point, Kenia disappeared from the club. She left her purse, her phone, simply vanished. She'd been dancing with some guy till about 1 AM, and then she was gone. They looked around and then left themselves. They took Kenia's purse and her phone that she left behind and assumed she just left of her own accord. The next morning, all calls, texts went nowhere. Well, I mean, her friends had her phone. Her sisters, boyfriend, friends, no one knew where she was. Kenia's parents were called and told to call the police and make a report. Her dad, well, stepdad, though they didn't really make that distinction. When her friends dropped over Kenia's stuff to the house, he went through her phone to see if there's anything. See, at 7 PM on April 1st, the night after Kenia was last seen, she got a text. She got many texts, but this one was different. It was weird and creepy, self-proclaimed. Hey, this is Travis, the guy who gave you a ride last night. White creepy van. Smiley face. Did you get your car home okay?
Of course, I would never, ever, ever condone killing, but I don't think... Well, no, I can't say that because a Zodiac killer taunted police for years. I don't know if Ted Bundy ever did, but, you know, maybe wanting to get recognition of some sort. But why, like, I don't even know if this guy killed. Well, I do know, but in case you guys haven't seen it.
No one had heard of a Travis before. Calls to this Travis character went unresponsive. Strike one. Now, Travis did call back Kenia's parents the next day, and he told them his story, which went a little something like this. Yeah, so I was driving in downtown Denver that night, and I seen her on the side of the road, and she looked hammered. So I asked if she wanted a ride in my white, stereotypical rape van. She said yes. She then wanted some smokes. I drove to a gas station. She started yapping away to some guy. She left with him. After that, strike two. Clearly bullshit. Kenya's dad told this Travis to then meet them at this gas station. And he did, as did the police at this point. Now, Travis was very upset. He seemed very upset with himself. And he told the police the exact same story he told Kenya's parents. In fact, he seemed like a, honest character, telling a dishonest story. And so the search continued and ramped up from there.
I feel like I'm gonna die without her.
2 days ago, Kenia Monge's family came forward begging for help.
Miracles do happen. I've seen them happen.
But now it's been almost a week since this 4'11", 90-pound girl disappeared from this downtown Denver nightclub, leaving behind all her possessions.
It's a nightmare.
The police spokesman says they just met with the family, now too distraught to talk. The case is serious enough that investigators have brought in outside help. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the FBI Safe Streets Task Force.
Some of the facts of this case got our attention right away, and we began putting resources into it, and as we followed leads, we became more concerned.
Earlier this week, Kenya's stepfather told us a, quote, good Samaritan had come forward, saying he picked up Kenia near the club the night she disappeared.
He told her that he lived not far from there, so he would take her home.
He says the Good Samaritan claims to have dropped her off at this gas station on Spear in Pennsylvania with another man. That's the last place police say she was seen, but officers won't confirm that story or any details of the investigation. While detectives are working it 24/7, the family's clinging to hope that Kenia is still alive.
She's very strong and beautiful, and she had a good heart too.
So in the search for Kenia, the police were obviously going to focus, on the guy who was last seen her. Travis Forbes, he came under the microscope. 31 years old, and in those 31 years, he'd been busy with a number of interactions with the law. He had been arrested 3 times for burglary, twice for shoplifting, and several other times for assault, parole violations, trespassing, and disturbing the peace, all since June 19.
I could hear my dog outside real quick. I'm sorry. I have to pause and go grab him before. I'm so sorry about that. I'm so sorry. Let's pick up where we left off with this piece of shit.
1997, when he was 17 years old. But right now it seemed like he straightened up and flew right. He was now the owner of Forbes, gluten-free food, formed in July 2009. Travis Eugene Forbes, of course, he named it after himself, and he ran the darn thing out of Debbie's Bakery.
Do not buy solar panels if you live in one of these 11 states of America. It's the worst decision you could make.
And cafe in southeast Denver, renting a little space there and delivering around the city.
Travis, this is Detective Gruen. How's it going? It's Travis Forbes.
She put her arm through his arm, like while they were sitting there smoking, and they spoke Spanish, and they walked off, and that's it. That was it, and I went home.
And that's the last you see of her?
Yes. If she had made the choice to go back home or to get in my van, I would have taken her home. Like, I would not. I mean, and if I felt any sort of weirdness about her walking over that guy, I would have done something.
So then, who was the guy Kenia left with? Well, Travis said this guy, his name was Dan, and that when they pulled up to the gas station, he saw Kenia, he offered her a smoke, they sat on the curb together, and they started yapping away in Espanol. Then they started walking off together. Travis asked Kenia, you okay? He said she ignored him, kept on walking with this guy, and Travis said, alrighty then, my work here is done. He went and stayed with his girlfriend. He stuck to the story, and police had a go at where he worked. Nothing odd. And his girlfriend, Carrie Humphrey, she confirmed his story. He arrived at about 3:30, left at 8 a.m. the next morning. In the meantime, no one came forward claiming to be or know this Dan the Man character they were looking for. And so on the off chance, maybe Kenia had left behind some clue in Travis's van, they knew that's where she last was apparently. Stuck something down the seat, something fell out, whatever. They got a search warrant to have a gander. And so they got Travis's van. And guess what it smelled like? Not granola bars, let me tell you. It was bleached up the wazoo. They also found a lot of dirt and grass under the van, like he'd been driving, well, not in Denver City. So, what was that? Well, phone records showed he had made and received a lot of calls from Keensburg, Colorado, and that he had been there between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m.
So this is really far from Denver. You're talking about the city here, and this is more than likely I-20. No, they have it marked as I-76. And here's our wonderful gift from the United States of America, where all the buried plutonium, uranium, you name it, is all in the middle of this place somewhere, with wildlife teeming. Supposedly the Geiger counters say there's no immediate danger, but yeah, they're surrounded by businesses, homes, DIA, you name it.
Not sleeping beside his girlfriend. A trip there, however, undertaken by the police, was fruitless at the time. And then, something else. This must be like strike 20 for Travis, because the owner of the bakery, you know, he kind of rented out a space from, well, she contacted the police with CCTV from the 3rd of April, which showed him putting a cooler in the freezer. Odd, as he didn't need to use the freezer ever. You don't freeze granola bars. And why was the cooler taped shut? He also had been burning shit in the alleyway behind the bakery. Once again though, this was fruitless, and nothing related to Kenia was found. And then further footage came out which seemed to reveal a little bit more of what happened to Kenia, or at least fill in some blanks. It's odd and not reassuring. This was taken from an apartment building lobby around the corner from the club Kenia had been at, and she's walking in with some guys. Then a fight seems to erupt, and Kenia's all over the place. The lads, whoever the frick, they seem to be dying to kick the shit out of each other, and this doesn't look like a safe place for her. It goes on for a bit, with one guy storming off. Kenia seems to be trying to calm things down, but then leaves alone 5 minutes after entering. 5 minutes later, she's seen walking by another apartment building and strikes up conversation with some male fella. She seems to be kind of standing around like she's waiting for someone, then she leaves. The way she was acting in the video looked way out of character. It looked like she had been drugged. Everything she did that night, her disappearing from the club, leaving her friends, leaving her stuff behind, it wasn't things she would do. She was known to be responsible, and she wouldn't leave with a strange group of guys. She probably had been roofied, or something, in the club. Those guys are tracked down, but you know, she was seen leaving on the footage, so they may be guilty of... But Kenia left of her own accord. Left to meet Travis.
I mean, it's been 2 weeks. Nobody's heard from her. There's been no trace of her. Like, it's surreal. I don't even know what to think of it.
Since you're a person of interest, let me ask you this. Did you do something with her?
No.
Did you kidnap her?
No.
Did you sexually assault her?
I did not.
Did you murder her?
I did not. No. No, and you know, having that on you, having that energy on you is very stressful. Man, I'm sorry that I was indifferent, that I didn't think anything. I didn't think anything. I didn't think she was gonna disappear. I could have walked with them. I could have been more. I could have been like, no, no, I'm gonna take you home, and then I could have intervened more, and not just said okay, and gone home, What's her name?
Kenia.
Kenia, yeah.
Oh my.
Did you murder her?
I did not. No.
Sending mixed messages there, Travis. Wow. He instantly realized he just screwed the pooch on national TV.
No.
Not long after this not suspicious at all interview,
What's her name?
Travis disappeared. Police put out a bolo alert from. He had been well, curious, and they wanted to keep him close. And then that interview, it just blew their minds. But it seemed like he had not just left the city, he had left the state. Then, a couple of weeks later, an ex-girlfriend of Travis, she reported her car stolen to the police. And, down in Austin, a cop just happened to come across it. He checked the license, saw it was reported stolen, and saw who was driving it. Not good for Forbes. Now, a hair of Kenia's had been found in his van, but, okay, he said she was in it already, right? Well, this hair found had the root attached, and it seemed like it had been ripped out. Combining this with descriptions of him as a compulsive liar, telling stories like his mother had an advanced case of breast cancer and he had to take care of her, or that he owned his own home, or how about this one? He was a dishonorably discharged Marine who had refused a second tour of duty in Afghanistan because he had killed a civilian. Don't know why you would make that up, but he was really just, an all-round giant piece of shit. With anger issues, apparently, he would shout and roar at the others who worked in the bakery, one time beating the shit out of his own van in anger. So the police were, well, on the first flight to Austin. The cops were now coming down hard on old Forbes, but he stuck to his story. He drove to the gas station she left, end of. Wink.
You know what? They send me to Texas because they think you're running to Mexico.
Oh, they do Mexico. And
you get a tan? Did you do anything there?
No.
Sure?
No. We never touched.
At all?
Not even a hug. And I usually hug people.
So did she have sex with you?
Nash, I think at this point, my lawyer should be present.
He stopped talking, but they did get his DNA. Then, on the stolen car charge, they brought him back to a Denver jail.
Since when are you open to trying new things?
Since I saw myself in a vision, I was married with a kid.
No!
Where he stayed for like a day or two before this ex-girlfriend dropped the charge. And he was gone again. And then the story just gets crazier.
Somebody to see if there's somebody in the apartment.
It was on the morning of the 5th of July 2011, after a night of partying in Fort Collins, someone called 911 to report a fire. The place, an apartment, it had been burnt to shite, and a woman had been rushed to hospital.
Just in case you guys didn't know, Fort Collins is the home to CSU, and of course, if you're familiar with Jason Momoa, Aquaman, what the hell is he called on Game of Thrones? Nonetheless, that Jason Momoa, while he's from Hawaii, he did attend CSU, and CSU is in Fort Collins. About maybe 1 million people, somewhere around there. It's not small, but it's not bigger than Denver either. It's just most of it's made up of, young college kids, really.
When the firefighters arrived, a naked woman who had been severely, and I mean severely beaten, was placed in an ambulance. She had jumped from the second story of an apartment building to escape the flames. She later suffered a massive stroke in hospital due to the injuries she had sustained, and these injuries weren't from falling out a window. The only way her family recognized her was a tattoo. She was placed in a coma in order to treat her. She had been raped and beaten, and then someone had tried to burn her alive. Fuck! And she, well, obviously at this stage couldn't tell you who. Lydia Tillman worked for a wine company, and she lived in that apartment by herself. When the investigators began to see, who would do this to her, it wasn't off to a good start. Anything left behind was bleached. The rest, carbon. And although Lydia, she couldn't talk, and seemed like she was dying, she was able to give them a clue. she had DNA under her fingernails. The police knew Travis Forbes went to Fort Collins. Where he was from, he was staying with his grandparents there when he left Denver. So now, out of, well, curiosity, let's say, they wanted to match the DNA from Lydia Tillman to the DNA they took in Austin. Then, get this, so they started tracking down Travis Forbes, right? It's putting him, under surveillance or whatever. And Fort Collins, it's a party town, it's a college town. So one night, they followed him around undercover as he wandered around a party district of Fort Collins. And he was slugging from a bottle of whiskey. He didn't go into any bars. He was just wandering around, looking in, having sups. Then, as the night was coming to a close, a woman, drunk, started walking home alone. Travis started following her. An undercover cop who saw this, who tried to head him off, basically went up to him, asked him a bullshit question, and he asked Travis for his name at one point. Travis gave his name as Travis Kennedy. Then, Travis started doing it to another woman who was walking home alone, following her. They said, fuck this, and arrested him on the spot for giving a false name. At this point then, they were praying his DNA would come back in time. I mean, a false name, it's a bullshit charge. He'd be out in no time. And then, just as he was bonding out, the DNA results came back. He was arrested now for much more serious crimes. Attempted murder. But he still wouldn't say anything about Kenia. After stewing for some time, Travis had one request.
I want to go to prison without being labeled as a sex offender.
Okay. What else?
That's it. That's it.
You'll confess to everything if you go to prison without being labeled a sex offender. Is that what you're saying? Is that you're man enough to that?
Yes. Yes. That's what I'm saying.
The deal was no death penalty, no sex crime charges. Sex offenders don't do well in prison. They shouldn't. But the family were desperate for Kenia. So if this is what it took, then it's what it took. He'd give a full confession, and he would lead them to Kenia.
I did not mean to kill her. I didn't pull over to kill her. I didn't pull over to rape her. None of that was in my head. None of it was premeditated. I wanted to bury her either next to some water or next to some trees.
Why is that?
Because that's where I would like to be buried. If somebody had killed me, I would hope that they would bury me next to something nice. Not just dump me in some dumpster.
So you find this spot. Why did you pick there?
Because of the trees.
Okay. And how long do you think you dug for?
It wasn't very long. I was actually surprised. I was worried that it was so late that I wouldn't have enough time.
Okay.
But I dug that hole fast.
Were you actually inside the hole?
Yeah.
And that's why you were able to tell me that it went shoulder depth.
I left my credit card inside the hole.
Why did you do that?
It's not that I wanted to get caught.
You know what? I never, ever fucking believed that. When he said he left his credit card there, he could have easily reported his credit card missing and made that out to be someone has never ever heard of. I think he's full of shit with that.
It wasn't like I was trying to brag that I did it, because I knew that if it was ever going to be found, holy shit, that body credit card. And those credit cards have embroidered lettering on them. I just figured it was right. I figured that if you found the body, that I should be caught.
He picked her up that night, raped and strangled her to death. He put her in a cooler, then burned her clothing. She remained in the cooler, in his van for a couple of days, then he buried her. Lydia Tillman, she was attacked as she walked home after watching fireworks with friends. Lydia Tillman would bravely make a full recovery, and honestly it was a miracle she did so after the damage that was inflicted upon her. She would go on to work as a yoga instructor. Kenia Monge was finally returned to her family and put to rest. Travis Forbes got what he deserved, and he deserves a whole lot worse. But that's life behind bars, so not much of a life at all. He also got 48 years on top for his attack on Lydia.
If somebody had killed me, I would hope that they would bury me next to something nice.
His whole sob story was complete and utter bullshit. He was not trying to do her a favor by burying her under a tree. Fuck that. When being sentenced, he did the whole, "Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, me hole." He tried to do it again after he murdered Kenia. He nearly killed a second woman, and he was literally friggin' arrested while going after more vulnerable women. Though it seems like there could be more to this Travis Forbes character. A lot more.
I want to confess. I want to confess so bad.
Because there's more victims out there we don't know about. That it's just a matter of time before they come out. Why are you nodding your head yes and you don't say anything?
Which is interesting because in this interview,
what's her name?
He seems like, well, we know actually it's not like we know he is this as someone who attacks, vulnerable women. A big bit.
Absolutely love Mike.
Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. Here, go on. I'll see you as always real soon in the next old one. Until then, please take care of yourselves. I love you. Mike out.
We love you too, Mike. You create the best content, man. Some of the best content on this platform. So, I'm going to get that uploaded and probably do one more.